Welcome to Parks and Cons Con Talk, where we bring you news from the very best in pop culture conventions and take you to the heart of the floor at some of our favorite shows. I'm Carmel, and this is my co-host Sean.
Hey guys, it is great to be back for another show. We are, as you can tell, on location this time. We're going to be talking Whedonopolis 2016 a little bit later as we get to our Under the Con. But first up, we're going to get to our news segment, and that segment we call Coming to a Con Near You. And that's where we pick 3 or 4 pieces of news that catch our attention. It's never a fully comprehensive list of all of the convention news out there. Always feel free to jump in the comments section on our YouTube channel and let us know if there's things that we're missing that you want us to talk about. But that said, what's up on our list today?
Well, first up in the news, Midsummer Scream just announced a big after-party / concert with Oingo Boingo. How big is this news, and what does it do for this first-year con?
Well, I mean, I think we've definitely talked about this convention on the past shows and talked about just how much credibility it's been building up with, the people involved, with the parks being involved. And I think this is just another one of those things, is everything about the show coming out the gate here in its first year, it lives and breathes credibility. And having a big time concert like this, I mean, this is not a small scale after party. This isn't, any warm up act. I mean, this is a major headline thing. One, it just adds to that credibility. Two, it instantly becomes notable of all the shows, that we cover, of the 50-some shows we'll be to this year. It's right there with the very, very top of any type of after-party thing. I mean, there's no con we've been to this year with as big of an after-party, for sure. And we'll talk about with Whedonopolis. We love what they've done here and the after party. But that said, Oingo Boingo, a concert like that is mega scale. And then the next thing I think is this is huge, that it crosses over to a whole nother demographic, or it opens doors. Because again, as big as conventions are to us, or probably to you guys that are watching a talk show about conventions, it's not for everyone. Not everyone's interested in cons. And so having Oingo Boingo be able to speak to their fans, use their social media, their outlets to advertise this show, I think it opens it up to a whole new audience. And yeah, I think it's a huge, huge get for the show, and excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've already expressed how excited we are about that show, and there's so much, we're so early on relative to when the show actually is in end of July, right?
Yeah, July 30th and 31st.
That's right. I'm very excited to find out what else they're going to be announcing, because it's just one big story after another with them, and it's very exciting to watch grow and stuff. So yeah, very excited to do that. And then they did release some of their hotels, so you can start booking those if you're planning on going. And because we've talked about it before, that Long Beach area is just a fun area to hang out in, and so having a room to be able to stay as late as you want and then just walk over and stuff is a good thing. So take a look at those hotels if you're interested. They are pricey because they are in Long Beach or near the beach and stuff, but probably well worth it if you're planning on staying out there for late at night, especially after the Oingo Boingo concert. So
yeah, I mean, it's really cool. It's amazing how quickly the shows come together, and it'll be interesting to see what else happens, as you said, in the next weeks and months as we come up to the show. So definitely we'll keep an eye on it.
Cool. So next in our news, Phoenix Comicon convention director Matt Solberg has taken to Facebook a few times in the last couple of weeks to talk bluntly about attendee complaints about guests, dates, and more. What do you think of these Facebook updates?
I really I'm not sure how much it's really come up on the talk show Phoenix Comic-Con in terms of, we've talked about some guest announcements and things like that, but I know we've talked more on the podcast about really loving the transparency. They're really good about talking nuts and bolts of the con and keeping people in the loop. We've talked definitely on the podcast about like the guest feedback surveys, asking, what sort of guests you want to see there, how much would you be willing to pay for photo ops or autographs, things like that. So this really fits in that. And so, it was interesting. So this is about a week ago. It's about 2 weeks ago now, maybe. But I'll just read this from him. I had lunch with the president and VP of Informa at San Diego Comic-Con last summer. We're talking shop, and they wanted to somehow team up because they were tired of booking managers pitting Informa against Wizard. I laughed and had to tell them that, well, from where we sit, from where I sit, we have the booking managers putting Wizard and your shows against us. So I think you're doing better than you think you are. It's all relative, right? I think the booking managers also know that in the last couple of years, attendees have become more competitive with guest announcements too. Hey Phoenix, get with it. Dallas has 18 actors while you have 14. That guest lineup isn't as good as Salt Lake, Philadelphia, Dallas, and they'll use that to the benefit too, that if we don't book this guest who we may feel is priced and high for our market, then another show will get that benefit. At this point, there will always be another show on the same weekend as us, simply because there are so many shows across the country. For us, it's about putting on the best show we can for our attendees, knowing that there will be limitations regardless of our dates. They've also talked recently about the escalator directions and why choices are made there. Again, the locations, guests, recently they announced, which I believe is their last media guest, which is Ralph Macchio, and there was a mention of that, you know, if you're not liking our guest list, you're probably not going to like our next announcement. And so I do like the transparency. I like that Phoenix Comic-Con really takes the feedback from the guests, from the attendees to heart, and tries to make the best decisions again. And I love that they kind of are on their own island, that they have their own show. They haven't sold out to something like Wizard and just, you know, been bought out or things like that. And they really try and do what they can for what's a really great community. I mean, we've talked about, we love going out to Phoenix. They have great comic shops, they have a great kind of geek scene, you know, all the pop culture fun is, there's a great cosplay community there too. So I have no doubt that it'll be a great show this year, and I love hearing those comments. I love the inside baseball, and again, probably if you're watching a show like this, you kind of like a little of that inside baseball as well.
I wonder how this is going to affect the show down the line if they do continue to struggle to get big name guests. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they had a full Star Trek panel. What other shows have we seen in their big rooms?
Well, I mean, they've had Will Wheaton, they had Jason Momoa last year was a big get. I mean, Nathan Fillion, several Walking Dead actors, Stan Lee, Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, so if they're not able to pull those big guests, it seems that either fewer people are going to go, or the same amount of people will go, and it just will clog up the arteries that much more, because we've, again, I don't think on this show, but definitely in our podcasts and in previous videos when we were covering Phoenix, had expressed concern because the last couple of years there had been issues with so much foot traffic, especially when the big panels were getting out. And so if there aren't big panels to pull people, I would think everything else is just going to be that much more crowded too. So kind of frustrating. I mean, it is obviously a very competitive environment with so many conventions out there. And yeah, I mean, I guess the actors obviously are going to go where they can make the most money and people are willing to pay them the most. And it's unfortunate that any shows get left out, and Phoenix Comic-Con has put on such a great show for so many years, and then all of a sudden to start having these this many difficulties, yeah, it sucks, but it's, I guess, a result of just so much being out there. But from the very beginning, I mean, we love that transparency and the fact that they do care so much. I mean, I think it was our first year going to Phoenix that there was the issue in the morning with the fire marshal allowing them to open the show on time.
Right.
And rather than just, okay, we're just opening late, deal with it, they extended the exhibition hall hour, I think by an hour or something like that, to allow people more time since they had lost the time. And they were open that it was a fire marshal issue, and just the fact that they're willing to be open and there isn't a lot of behind the scenes stuff and it doesn't leave us guessing as to what's going on. I appreciate that, but I'm not.
I think it's, I mean, to me it's refreshing that it's just honest. It is what it is, the market. I mean, when you have shows like Creation, Wizard, that have these big kind of armies of shows, they can sign their actors, or guests in general, not even just actors, but to these exclusive contracts. And you know, these booking managers are definitely going to book 6 shows rather than 1 or whatever it is. I mean, Phoenix now has Fan Fest, but at the same time, they don't want to even have the same guests at Comicon and FanFest necessarily, because they want to bring different people to the show, and that makes perfect sense. But it does make it difficult. It's not even just about the money, but about those contracts. We've talked with Amazing Comic-Con. Now they've got Oklahoma, they've got Houston, they've got Vegas. They've got Hawaii, and just last week or whatever was on the SDCC blog podcast. I was on there, and Jimmy J, that runs the show, was on there, and he talked about just how nice it is now having Hawaii and Vegas, because it's a little bit harder to get the talent to want to go to Oklahoma or Houston, but that's the carrot now. It's like, well, if you want to come to Hawaii, Jim Lee, then why don't you maybe do our show in Houston as well? And that's just something Phoenix Comic Con doesn't have. And so I do like how they speak to it. It keeps the fans in the mix of what's going on. It allows them to know, obviously, it's a tough market. I mean, it's just a really tough market. And for you and I, as many shows as we go to, we know that even, let's say, Stan Lee, for example, we probably aren't going to get an autograph from him because we've got like 6 or 7 times that we've done that. We may or may not go to his panel because we've seen him speak a number of times, but we still like him being at the con because it will draw a bunch of people away. And so the same thing for any actor, media guests that we may not be interested in. It's great to see them there just because, as you said, it can pull people off the floor. That said, Phoenix Comic Con is such a big show with using multiple hotels with the horror wing and the anime and all of that. My hope is that even if it's a little bit of a down year in terms of the big draws in those rooms, I think they can take a pretty good punch on the floor. I mean, yeah, sure, they'll definitely clog arteries and things, but I think they've improved on that as well each year. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, we'll be there. We love the Phoenix Comic Con shows, and yeah, well, it'll be to be continued as we follow along with the story.
Yep, we will. As more announcements come up, we'll discuss it. But it's coming up pretty quick.
Yep.
So there
Just
may
a
not
few
be
weeks.
too many more. So okay. So next up. Funko recently announced the return of their Funko Fun Days party for July 22nd at San Diego Comic-Con. Tickets go on sale June 1st and are $120 each and include a mystery box of fun. Are you interested in this off-site event?
I am, for a few things. One, on the grander scale, it's a reminder of like what time of year it is that the Comic-Con news is coming in. Our next news story just hits that even a little bit further. But so it's exciting just that we're in that season where we're going to get more and more announcements. The other part about it though is Funko. It's really been interesting to watch them, particularly from the lens of Comic-Con, because I remember Funko being there in kind of the artist alley, kind of where October Toys is set up, and some of these other smaller independent toy designers, and they were a custom toy for the most part, or an art toy. And obviously now they're in every Walgreens, every convention, just everywhere.
Yeah, I have them at Ralph's, the grocery store.
Everywhere. And so it's interesting to see that. It feels like in a lot of ways, as big as they are at Emerald City, and they've done exclusives there for years and stuff, it feels like in a lot of ways, for us at least, we've watched Funko grow through the lens of San Diego Comic-Con. So now this party, last year, it was huge, it was crazy, it was nuts, people got injured, there was thousands and thousands of dollars of scalping going on. I mean, so it really sounds like the prototypical San Diego Comic-Con experience of just frenzied craziness, and so fun days, frenzied days, crazy days. Heard lots of accounts on various podcasts and from various people that knew they were there that there's a lot of elbowing and pushing and grabbing, and so again, it sounds like San Diego Comic-Con. So I am very curious.
6-year-old even get their arm broken?
Something like that, yeah. And I'm not sure which, basically as the years progressed, I've forgotten what's truth and what's fiction and what is hearsay and stuff. But you can Google and find lots of stories about it. So that said, though, I'm interested. I love the idea of getting this box of stuff. Like who doesn't like blind boxes? A mystery box of fun. And so I know you and I have definitely talked about maybe trying to get there. Now that said, June 1st they've given a lot of notice of the sales of the tickets. I believe last year it took about an hour to sell out. This year, I'm guessing it will take 30 seconds to sell out.
Because last year they did, it was kind of
It was
silent.
like a slow leak. Yeah. It was a much slower leak, and I mean, I know you and I didn't really. I mean, we maybe mentioned in passing, but it was one of those things that was just kind of maybe not. So this year we'll see. I mean, obviously for us as we're recording this tonight, we've got a couple weeks still to decide this, so we'll see. But I would like to see it. I mean, I'd like to participate in everything at Comic-Con every year. And this is one of those spectacles. In terms of Funko Pops, we're not huge collectors of them. We have, I've said we probably have like 15 or so of them around the house, and there's some fun ones, and they're always cute and they're always neat, but space is an issue, and you're not as into them. If you were at all into them, we'd have more of them like you were when we first got with Vinylmations. I'm always going to be more into, Star Wars, Marvel Legends, or whatever.
We've also over the years been concerned because it didn't seem like paint quality was necessarily great. It seemed like they were mass producing too many of them.
Definitely a lot of quality control issues, for sure.
Yeah, so for all those reasons, we haven't really, gotten too committed to it. Plus now with the exclusive situation at Comic-Con and stuff being so crazy, and the way that they sell and distribute their tickets to buy has been so inconsistent and stuff, I've really just tried not to get into it.
Yeah.
That being said, this event is different. I like that we'll just automatically get this box of stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully it would be great stuff, and then I'm sure they'll still do the giveaways and stuff during the party that they've done in the past and stuff. I won't be, I don't think, in the middle of the mess and hopefully getting elbowed in the face or anything like that. I'll stay off to the side and see if I can still take part in whatever. That's assuming we can get tickets. I mean,
right.
I just did the dash to get our hotel room for the Gallifrey 1 convention, and that was sold out in seconds. And this is just like the old Comic-Con days when everyone was on their computers with several computers and stuff to get the tickets as quickly as possible. So this isn't an event that that's going to make or break my convention or anything, but I think, we try for tickets, and if we get in, cool. If not, well, we'll hear all the stories and follow up with stuff. And then also, as far as on the Parks and Cons stuff that we do, we try as much as possible to experience and be knowledgeable of the stuff that we share. So this is such an important event to so many people that for the Parks and Cons aspect, I kind of feel like it would be a good thing for us to actually get in there, see for ourselves, and then we can speak more knowledgeably, but we'll see. Yeah,
and that's the thing. We've had a lot of interest over the years. We do the visual guides for Hasbro, Mattel, things like that, and we've had requests for Funko, but we don't bother with Funko exclusives at San Diego, and so we've only really gone down that path with things that we have experience in, because we don't want to talk about things that we don't know about. That said, we've talked about kind of outsourcing and getting some help with feedback, because obviously there is a real big demand there. And so for that reason, and I've thought about that with Funko's, just even though there hasn't been an exclusive the last couple of years that I've wanted to battle out for at that booth. Part of me wants to do it just so I can say, okay, well, this is how it works, and then we can come up with a guide for the next year. So that kind of fits there as well. So we have a bunch of friends that want to go to it as well. The problem always with San Diego Comic-Con is everything's about opportunity cost. So we know there's going to be 15 other things that night that we also want to do. But obviously, if we do decide to go and we do get tickets, we'll definitely go to that, because we're not going to lose the $120. So
right.
All right, next.
Okay, well, sticking with SDCC news, Mattel used Friday the 13th as an opportunity to announce their SDCC Monster High Ghostbusters mashup Frankenstein. This is in addition to the previously announced set of Rebecca Steam and Hexica Steam. Excited about these announcements?
No, I mean, not the Monster High, not surprisingly, but in a way excited, because Monster High is really the kickoff of the exclusive season, usually. I mean, there's been Square Enix has announced some stuff. I think NECA's announced some stuff. There's been things trickling out for sure in the last couple weeks. But Monster High is one of those ones that really gets people to sit up and take notice. The crossover with Ghostbusters is a cool thing there. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited just in the fact that it's like, as I said, we're sitting here end of May, you know, looking at Funko Fun Days and looking at, you know, Mattel and, you know, announcing their exclusives. It's not going to be long till they do their pre-sale and everything's out there, and, you know, we're counting down. It's like, yeah, we're whatever, 7 weeks away from San Diego. It's exciting. I mean, it is the Super Bowl. As many cons as we cover, you know, it's gotten to the point, at least for me, where it's not necessarily the most fun of the cons, but it's the most exhilarating of the cons for sure. Even when we go down to the gas lamp on the off season, you know, we'll go out in a couple weeks to start doing our visual guides and stuff and filming them. There's just like the heart starts beating because it's just exciting to be there, even though there isn't a San Diego Comic-Con at that time. So I guess in, you know, coming about it from a long way around, I guess I am excited about the announcements, not so much because I'm going to be targeting Monster High, but because it does signal that we are fully engaged in that season. Whedonopolis, we've had a couple announcements here today about things that are going on at San Diego Comic-Con, smaller things, but still, it's just, that's the season. I was texting with Carrie over from the SDCC blog, and she was like, yep, 'tis the season, and it's just one of those things.
Yeah, you feel the heart race out of excitement. I feel it mine start to race a little bit out of stress and anxiety.
Yep.
That being said, of course, we go because we enjoy it, but because there's so much going on and there's so many things we try to do, both as attendees and covering and everything else, I just can't help but feel some anxiety related to it because it's once a year and it's so important relative to a lot of the stuff that we enjoy doing and stuff. So I feel a little angst about the whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean, for us, the last couple of years have treated San Diego Comic-Con 90% as work. I mean, we really, when we cover cons, we treat them as work. A job you enjoy, but we treat it as work. We do both get press passes from CCI. We cover it. We get down there Monday before preview night, and we go down there several times the weeks before. So it is work, but it's fun work, but it is work. So it definitely is a different experience now than maybe 10 years ago when we would go. So that's for sure. And someday we'll flip the camera off and turn, you know, parks and cons off and just go back to just enjoying it, I'm sure. But it is a little bit different experience, and it's always something to kind of balance out because it does cost a lot of out-of-pocket money to get down there, obviously, and we want to enjoy it at the same time. But I think that's a fair assessment there. So all right, so let's move from the news to our segment we call Under the Con. And Under the Con is where we go underneath the hood of a convention, kind of put a magnifying glass on it to really look at one show in depth and kind of take you to the floor and give you a good feel for it. And that brings us to our room here. So we are at Whedonopolis 2016. It's the first show that we've hit the road for to spend a night out, I think, since probably WonderCon. So having a good time with that. It's always nice when we can actually get out in the hotel and just, again, coming back to the work side of Parks and Cons is really just focus and be immersed in that world for that time. So we're out here. The show is at the Airtel Plaza Hotel. That's where we're staying. In Van Nuys, right? Yeah, Van Nuys. So it's really a part of LA that we don't spend much time in at all. Like, we came across a super old 80s Toys R Us that I love just for nostalgia's sake, but it was like, wow, where are we? But it's right nestled up here against the Van Nuys Airport. Really like the hotel a lot. Not that we're reviewing the hotel here, but the hotel obviously can add or subtract from an experience, and it's a nice layout for a hotel. It's very spread out. It reminds me a little bit of the Burbank Marriott in a way. It's more spread out, but just that it's the type of hotel that can handle a show of a certain size, and this is that perfect size where it just fits in there like a glove. If they all of a sudden double attendance next year, it's probably not a good fit anymore. But for now, got a nice restaurant, snack bar area. They've got 4 panel rooms going. We'll talk more about that. They've got the exhibit hall separate from that over there. It's a really nice, it feels like we're kind of in this quiet little cut-off section of LA. And so today, as we're filming this, we've basically made the choice just to lock down, not go anywhere, just enjoy the con, not, you know, drive over to Universal Studios or anything like that, and have really liked that. The show is a 3-day show, so like that a lot. We've talked about that numerous times on the podcast, probably a little bit on the talk show here as well, but just, you know, totally understand why most cons are not 3 days. That's a rarity. Many are 2 days, many more are 1 day. Totally understand all that, understand the difficulties for exhibitors to get out on Friday. That said, when you can have that 3rd day like they have here, and it particularly contributes well to this show because this show is so much of a kind of community show. It really is about hanging out with friends and enjoying and slowing things down, and it allows that. On that note, the 3 days, $70. So really, really economical way to attend a show. You can't beat that. We've talked about that. It's a similar price to what Monster Palooza was. Thought that was a great value. This one just as much. So let's talk a little bit then about the floor. And before we talk about some of the things we picked up or saw on the exhibit hall floor, it's important to note they call it the Sunnydale Mall, which is really cool. They've got their own little brand name there. It's one of those things you wonder, why doesn't every con do that? It's just, you know, call it the Hall of Justice, call it, you know, Avengers Man, or whatever you want to call it. It's just kind of a fun thing. But here, tying into the Buffy universe, and this entire con is celebrating the Whedonverse, you know, so whether it's, you know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Buffy or anything that's even tangentially related to Joss Whedon's work, so the Whedonverse is here, and obviously Buffy is kind of the heart of that. So why don't we take you to the floor of the Sunnydale Mall so you can get an idea of what were some of the offerings there.
How's it going? That's always good in your mind. She's gonna be in a couple of months. No, like, she just walked away to get her ticket. Checks from her university. I got it. Look, if they were in the beginning, they would obviously that's fine. But if it wasn't like I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they. If they let it be, because like if they make it like to a big fan base and the fans have all the, it's probably going to be. I haven't.
All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed that look at the floor there. So I think you said you counted about 25 vendors?
Yeah, I think so, between 25 and 30 actually in the exhibit, or actually I guess in the Sunnydale Mall area.
You know, a lot of things about the show remind, and we've talked off the air about this, and also I guess on the podcast that we're recording for this one, but you know, San Diego Comic Fest, Gallifrey 1, where it is a show for fans by fans, and as a part of that, the sales aren't the biggest thing. Like the exhibit hall, I mean, there's some shows like in LA Sci-Fi, for example, it's all about the exhibit hall, and that's all there is. It's just, it's, you know, kind of a glorified swap meet in that way, but that's not this show. This show, it's a complementary piece to everything else going on. And with that said, there's a lot of unique things on the floor. I mean, I'd say that to me is the thing that stands out the most, is no two vendors were really the same or are the same. There's different things across the board. Some things we picked up. Well, first off, we did really very little shopping for ourselves. And on my side, it's because so much of what I look for at a convention are action figures, comics, t-shirts. And there really weren't almost any action figures. There were no comics, at least well, there's a couple independent comics, I take that back, but you know, diving through bins type of comics. And there were very limited on the t-shirts. And so it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just I didn't feel compelled to do a big shopping drive or anything like that, because we're in a very busy season where we're going to be at a lot of convention shopping. And there's just so much else here that kind of has entertained me that I didn't feel, you know, similar to Monsterpalooza, although very different types of shows. I just feel like there's so many things here more to listen to. There it was visually to see at Monsterpalooza. Here it's more to listen to, and we'll get to that in the panels. So I feel very content without having to feel like pulling my wallet out and constantly buying.
Oh, I agree. For me, a lot of the vendors were familiar that we've seen at other conventions. Also, we're kind of on or at least I'm kind of on a budget this weekend. We have so many things coming up that we just need to pace our spending a bit. So there wasn't anything that I saw and I had to have, so I haven't yet I haven't yet really purchased anything for myself, but I've enjoyed looking at the stuff, and there are unique things, and maybe the next time I see some of these vendors at a different convention, if budget's not as much a concern, I may splurge a bit. But for this weekend, yeah, like you said, there's enough other stuff too that it didn't feel like in order to enjoy myself I needed to spend money necessarily. So
we did pick up for a friend on Twitter. You can find her at Just Jen, but you might recognize Just Jen Fukujawa. She does work with Nerdist and all sorts of fun, geeky recipe things, StarWars.com, but she wanted the Loki helmet necklace here, which is really cool. And I mean, a great item, $20, really, really cool thing to pick up there. And there's a lot like that. There's the cool cards that said, you know, it's like almost like a condolence card. You're too into Harry Potter, and then it comes with a little necklace that, you know, you're too into Doctor Who, you're too into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Lots of cool cups and mugs. The glasses from, I've got the card here, those glasses, frosted looking, the Mombi Zombie, Mombi being M-O-M-B-I-E, Zombie, but you can find them on Twitter, Instagram, and all of that. The books, you know, the guide for the deceased from Beetlejuice. I mean, fun things like that. That's Kit's Designs. We've seen her at a few shows. She has a website, kits.etsy.com. So, I mean, a lot of fun things, unique things. Definitely slanted a little bit more, I'd say, for a little bit more in terms of the jewelry and things like that, hair bands, different things like that, but just fun stuff in general there. A good floor. It was nice, you know. I think I visited the floor 5 or 6 times, even though I didn't end up really buying. I mean, we bought a couple gift type things or things like that, or buying things for people. Also, they had adjacent to it, then they had a signing area where they would do limited signings there, and a photography area. Should say in that area then PJ, is it Harshma? I'm never sure if I've got that right, but we've talked about, he was at Long Beach Comic Expo. He's the executive producer on Con Man series with Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion and all those guys doing that, which is a really fun show. We'll talk more about that in the panel segment, but he did a signing, brought a bunch of the free Comic Book Day comics and signed them, was promoting their work with Comicon HQ, the new streaming service with Lionsgate and Comicon International, gave some buttons away there. Everybody checking in got Dark Horse bags to celebrate, you know, again, the Whedonverse, and I thought that was a nice addition there. Fan Base Press, the comic publishers, are at the con and put together these nice lanyards to go with what are really great with great badges. Some stickers from Dark Horse and other, you know, bookmarks on the floor. Great program, you know, included in your registration with all sorts of fun artwork, again, from the Whedonverse. And then inside, as they go down the guest bios, it's one of the best things I've ever seen with the guest bios, is underneath each photo there's an area to get the signature. So you could really make a weekend of fun just tracking down all of the guests that they have there and getting them to sign things.
Yeah, well, not only making the weekend of fun, but also turning the program into a really cool souvenir, because so often we take our programs and stack them or put them somewhere, but yeah, filling them up with autographs really
Yeah.
makes them an even better souvenir that you might actually display and stuff.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, so what so much of the convention is about really to me is the art of storytelling. I mean, so much is about the behind the scenes, it's about the producers, it's about the writers. There's a whole writing track, and it's the first track of programming listed in the program, and I don't think that's by coincidence. I think they really place an emphasis here on the story and the art of the story. And so I think as you look at the vendors in the Sunnydale Mall, all of them are unique and they all tell different stories with the items they're selling there. There aren't walls of Funko Pops, for good or bad. You know, if you're a Funko Pop collector, I'm sure you miss out on those, but there just aren't those. And so everything's kind of unique. They all have a story and they're all kind of artists behind these works, which is neat. So let's get over then to the guests, because some of these guests are making their way into the mall there to sign. So a good list of guests here, again, of that talent. Some of it in front of the camera, a lot of it behind the camera though, and a lot of the talent leading off with Juliet Landau, who's the guest of honor. You know, she's known as Drusilla from Buffy. She's known, you know, for working Ed Wood or as a voice actor with the DC animated shows or things like that. But she's also a producer, a director, a writer. And her panels, which we'll show you a little footage of in a minute, you know, she speaks to that. And so that's kind of neat. Also, co-guest of honors, Mark Scott Zickery, the Twilight Zone companion, author, also a writer and producer and just a behind-the-scenes guy from things like Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, the real Ghostbusters, a ton of credits there. You've got Doug Jones here, which is, you know, Pan's Labyrinth, the Silver Surfer from Fantastic Four. He was in Arrow, Flash, you know, a great just character actor that shows up a lot in these days. And then you've got, you know, a ton of other guests. Todd McIntosh did all the effects, or I should say the makeup for Buffy, I think seasons 1 through 6. He had a great panel, checked out. You've also got a bunch of the, you know, editor, a ton of the people from the visual effects team for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter. They've got a series of, what I think, 4 panels on Sunday where they're talking about those things. So a good kind of collection of talent from, again, making the shows come to life in all kind of different ways of telling stories, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unique in that. I mean, a lot of the cons that we go to, I think, really put the emphasis on the in front of the camera stuff, the actors, the big names and stuff, whereas this show appreciates and displays the behind the scenes stuff, which other conventions of course do also, but I don't know if it was a thing of, because it's a first year, they didn't have maybe the funding to pull the front of the people in front of the camera type of guess, or if it was a deliberate choice to stick with behind the scenes stuff. But unless, I mean, it's great to get that perspective too. Not just hearing the actors telling their stories, but hearing about the way these stories are developed and the work that goes on behind is really enlightening and great to hear and great to find out about and stuff too.
Yeah, like with acting from behind the mask, you know, it's neat to hear them talk. You know, you have the actors talking about how they work with those, you know, prosthetics and the masks and the makeup and all of that. At the same time, hearing why the choices were what they were for these masks. And so kind of that merging of how that all comes together then again ultimately to present a story to the audience. And yeah, it's a really fun way of how they merged these panels. It felt like this really eclectic group of talent that again, I just kept coming back to, and I haven't read that line anywhere, but it immediately hit me Friday when we got here about, you know, an hour into the show. It's all about the art of storytelling. Like, it just feels like that's kind of the theme of this convention, and they do a really good job with it. It's really effective. So so speaking of some of these panels, then we've got a few snippets from definitely that behind the mask, acting behind the mask. We've got Con Man series, Juliet Landau. Why don't we go ahead and show you a few minutes of footage here from those panel rooms.
So I thought to myself, what am I going to do? And I remembered that moment flash in The Exorcist of the white face with the black eyes, and how scary that was, because it hits a very visceral nerve.
Yes.
It's like an anti-clown. And that's what I used as the basis of the paint job on the gem.
Wow. Okay.
That was my inspiration.
Yes, I remember there were like the detail of like the veins and all that. There's all that.
Well, then you work also with what the sculptors have done.
Because you guys paint, they actually painted that fresh every day.
Oh yeah, it's a brand new appliance.
You did a brand new, and every day they would paint, they painted again.
You can see across the guy's forehead there, all that white, and then the appliance. That edge is like tissue paper, and it blends onto the skin, and you glue it flat, and then you put layers of product over it to try and blend it into the skin. Well, when you take that off, it tears. There's no way to get that thin edge again, so it has to be a fresh one every time.
So this is actually this trailer that we're working on. This isn't the actual comic. So this is your... This part is still a work in progress. This is going to be the opening of it. Each one will have their credits that come up here. Okay, here's a comment. By the way, that piece I just showed you, that's the first time I saw it. So as you know, so it plays in, you're allowed to read along with it, so you can read at your own pace, the music still plays in the background, and then every time this goes red, you can click forward.
Not only has he done, like we've done 3 interviews with Gary, but he has a camera, which some of you know, from 1853, and he's been doing this tintype photography. So he's done these amazing portraits.
Juliet, where did you get the idea from?
Well, Deborah. Actually, really the inception of the idea was because of working on Buffy. Through the years, whenever I've met people who have played in this sandbox, who have been a part of this kind of storytelling about vampires, we've had this camaraderie, like, oh, one of us, we've been in this world together. And I've always had the best conversations. And I was telling Deb about it, and he was like, and we started thinking, like, people would love this. It's stuff that nobody's ever heard before, and would be so fascinating, I think, for other people to be a party to. And so we decided to finally do it.
And it is really bizarre, because the conversations have really ranged. Like, Julie has these conversations about vampire teeth, about how you're speaking about, to really like intense stuff like, how do you feel about aging? What's it like to age? But
because of not aging as a vampire.
So we're jumping. Why don't we tell that I've got a number of stories that I want to get Juliet to tell. But one I want to get her to tell. Talk about the newest one is The Vampire by the Dustbin.
Okay, this doesn't have anything to do with my project, but it's kind of funny. I was pulling up from our house, and we used to have where our garbage bins would actually be on this gated thing, but we don't anymore, so that they are out on the street with this like kind of wood raised platform. And so people walk, one of our pet peeves is that people walk their dogs in the neighborhood and they're always putting the poop in our garbage cans. And so we don't even have pets in our garbage cans, so like you go near it and you're like, oh my God. So I'm driving up and this fellow is like literally holding this green bag of poop. I can see because he's got this little dog and he's like about to put it in our bin, and I'm like, I roll down the window and I'm like, excuse me, would you mind not like putting the poop? And he turns around and I was like, oh, it's the actor that played
Steve Noonan
Steve
from True
Noonan
Blood.
on True Blood. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I saw him see me and be like, oh, it's the actress who played Drusilla. And we're looking at each other, he's like poised with this bag of shit. And I'm like, and he's like, oh, no worries. I'm like, no, you can carry on this time. I just, it'd be nice if you did it. And we like have this weird conversation, and it just was so surreal. It was funny, and I was thinking, maybe I should be like, hey, we're doing this project. Like, forget about the poop. Do you want to be part of it?
So hopefully that gave you just a little bit of a feel for what was going on inside those panel rooms. You are more the panel person than I. So what's been your feelings about the panel options?
I really enjoyed them. Because we were able to kind of immerse ourselves this weekend and we didn't run around too much. It's nice, it's great that there are so many panels that are of interest to us that we don't need to spend all our time on the in the Sunnydale Mall, that we can go and sit in the panel. And I'm not sure what the attendance is like at the show. It's hard to tell because it is so spread out. There isn't one place where everybody's congregating, so it's hard to kind of even estimate what the attendance has been. But so far it's been great in that there was never an issue of getting seats or anything at any of the panels and stuff. And yeah, I found them all very enjoyable and great speakers, and yeah, just a lot of fun and a lot of information to learn and stuff.
Yeah, and I think my earlier comment about just, feeling that the conversations going on, met my need of collecting, that I feel like I was able to collect experiences rather than, toys or comics, is about the biggest endorsement I can give for a show, because it's really tough for me to sit in panel rooms because I always want to be on the floor, and that's just kind of my collector's mentality. But at this show, I've felt very content. I mean, on Saturday night, we spent, we did the Con Man series, which was about an hour and a half of panel there, which was great. That was followed up by Juliet Landau. We spent another, 45 minutes or so in there. Then we grabbed a quick bite, did a little podcasting, maybe an hour and a half break in there. And then we went over to the little, their little media center, their movie theater, if you will, and, spent 2.5 hours watching Avengers Age of Ultron. And I felt very content the entire time. I never felt like getting out and doing anything different, which is just, I think it says to me a lot about the offerings there. And they're really, it's interesting because despite it being a really calm, cool vibe, a non-stressful vibe, I felt like I've constantly had to make difficult choices because there's been good programming in multiple rooms. And that's great. I mean, that's obviously the ultimate thing. It's why, on a much different scale, San Diego is such a great show, is because you just always have other things you want to be doing. While you're doing something really good, there's 5 other things you wish you could be doing. And so for a show of this size to be able to bring that type of quality of presenters, of talent, of programming, I think it says a lot. And definitely, huge kudos to the people behind Whedonopolis for being able to put that together, because this does not appear to be a show that was, by any means just thrown together. There's a lot of thought put into all of the choices, it feels like, and it's great. I mean, a part of Whedonopolis is raising money too for fandom charities. They do good work as well outside the convention sphere, but they're, raising money. And it just feels like there's a lot of heart and thought that's gone into the choices of the shows, not just in the panel room, but throughout the entire fabric of the show.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really feels like a labor of love from the people who put it together. I mean, again, by fans, for fans, and yeah, everybody seems to be enjoying themselves, and it's just a cool place to kind of just hang out and experience the Whedonverse.
Yeah, very excited. Okay, a couple more points that we have on our, when we go down under the con, that we talk about cosplay, a little bit of it. We did not go to the prom, so I know there's more costumes there, and there's been other opportunities, but it hasn't been like a huge force on the floor. We may be missing a little bit of it too, but it hasn't been a thing where there feels like there's a pressure either, where it's like everybody's in costume, just a few costumes here and there. In a lot of ways, the con, it feels like what I oftentimes will call like a hangout con. Like, it feels like the type of con where you can go shopping, you can go to the program room, you can go watch a movie, and you can also just sit and have a coffee and hang out with people and still be enjoying things, and it's just all kind of part of that same experience there. If they'll be back, we don't currently have a date for a 2017 show. I don't know if they're married to this date and this time of year, but it works for us, so we wouldn't mind. We've talked about, we've enjoyed the hotel, we've enjoyed the show. We'd love to come back, you know, next May if they have it again and spend 3 days. Hopefully there isn't, you know, a media day at Knott's and Universal the same day or something like that, but it's been very enjoyable for all of that, and so you know, like it a lot. For more information about this show, you can head over to Whedoncon.com and check out, you know, what was offered there. Obviously, we're going to be putting together as much as we can on our website as well at parksandcons.com, but Whedoncon.com is the official website, and keep an eye there, and hopefully our calendar too on our homepage for whenever the 2017 dates are announced.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up with our last segment, which is con tips.
Yep, so in our con tips section, this is where we try to give you some tips to help improve your future con experiences. Sometimes these tips are going to be kind of generic, general, just information, and other times they're going to be specific to a specific show. This time, what we are discussing are cars and cons.
Yeah, this goes back to, you know, we talked about I don't know, probably a month and a half ago now, but just when I was asked to give my top 10 convention tips for that interview. And one of the ones was talking about just using the car as a home base, and it's something you and I talk about a lot. And so I thought, you know, that's an apt one, because I know a lot of people that I talk to about conventions, they don't really think of the car in that way. And I know for you and I, that's always been a big thing, whether it's to drop stuff off or pick things up, whether it's to take a break, charge phones, whatever. And so I thought it was a kind of an apt thing. So a couple of things just on that, and then on my side at least, and then anything that you have. But one is just, you know, obviously parking is a huge thing, and trying to have the car somewhere very centrally located that you're able to access. You know, at a place like the Long Beach Convention Center, going back to a con like Long Beach Comicon or Midsummer Scream will be there, their parking is just kind of unified right underneath the convention center. At San Diego Comic-Con, the same thing. It's very convenient there. Here at Whedonopolis, at this hotel, it's, you know, kind of outside there. We're also staying at the hotel, so it's a little bit different. But that said, even in this case, we've still stopped by the car a few times. You know, we bring in what we need to bring in. But having your food located there, having it as a drop-off station, having bags, we constantly have, you know, bags like this, usually Walking Dead bags actually from Comic-Con that we get just waiting in the car, bags and boards for comics, tape to seal up bags and boards, all of these supplies, like our own little supply center in there where we can change things out. I love, especially when we talk about San Diego Comic-Con, there we have full bags that we trade out with our swag bags, and so it's easy, you know, you load up a bag full of swag, drop it off in the car, pick up a new bag cleaned out. So I think parking is a big thing there. Being able to have a car. Now, obviously, if you're in a situation where you're walking to the convention, maybe you're flying and not going to be renting a car. I mean, different scenarios call for different things. But in any case, when you can use that car as a home base and use it as a spot for breaks, you've taken naps in the car before, all sorts of things like that. I mean, I think a lot of times, at least in the people we talk to, maybe it's not as widespread as just the convention goers that we know personally, but very few of them really will talk about using the car as kind of a tool to kind of give them a home base.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have a place that's our own, so no matter what the madness is on the floor or what's going on anywhere else, as long as our car is nearby, we can go take a quick stop and collect our thoughts if we need to, or I mean, I've even taken time out because I've had work to take care of, or phone calls to contact clients, or emails to return, and as long as I'm not completely without reception, I can go to the car, and it allows me to be at the convention, but to step away, take care of what I need to, and then go back. So yeah, there's an infinite, well, I don't know about infinite, but a lot of upside to having access to the vehicle and being able to use it as a spot, as a breaking place, as a storage, as everything, basically. And
that's a good point that you brought up, and I think we've talked about it a little bit in past shows, but just about, you know, kind of reevaluating your plan using the car as a home base for that, is being able to dip away, especially in cons that are more hectic. It's, you know, I know there's some people that will go to San Diego Comic-Con and sleep in their car, and that's definitely not anything. I'm just not interested in going to a con where it's going to be like my room, but I am very happy for it to be our room during the day as kind of a transitory spot to stop by. As you said, to drop off, to pick up, to reflect on things, you know, flip the car on, turn the air conditioning on if it's hot, you know, or whatever, and just kind of take a break, because you know, it can be hard, depending on the con, to find any quiet corners to be able to concentrate. We've podcasted from the car before as well. It's just having a spot where you can go to, collect your thoughts and have it. So if you don't already use your car as a home base, consider it, think about it. There's a lot of value, I think, parking where you park. We use Parking Panda quite a bit these days. Feel free, if you want to try out Parking Panda for a lot of these conventions, they have parking nearby. You can use our code and you get, what is it, $5 off the first time.
Yeah, when you sign up.
When you sign up there. So it's Parking Panda, it's Sean Mars, SHAWNMARS, to get that discount. But that's been useful as well, just to kind of have that taken care of. We know where we're going to park, we just pull right in there, and then it immediately becomes kind of a working center for us. And I think as much work as we're doing at the cons, if it's useful to us, it probably will be useful to others in maybe not having to put as much work in even. So
Yep, definitely.
all right, so I think that's a good point to wrap up this big episode of our con talk there. So if you would, tell the people where they can find you.
Okay, well, you can reach me directly on Twitter at Connoisseur, which is CON_NOISSEUR, or you can email me at carmel@parksandcons.com.
And you can find me at Twitter at @the_con_fluence, at the Confluence. That's my personal account. If you're interested in theme parks as well, this talk show that you're watching right now, we have this talk show every week, and it just alternates between theme parks and convention talk. So 1 week park talk, 1 week con talk. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel to let us know that you're interested in this type of talk, and please help spread the word by letting as many people as you know that are interested in this type of stuff, let them know about us. If you're interested in even more in-depth conversation and really literally talking from the floor of the shows or from the heart of the parks, check out our podcast. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. Just search Parks and Cons. Also, you can find us across the board on all the social media platforms that we use, all of them at Parks and Cons, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Periscope, all of them Parks and Cons. Very easy to find us there. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here, and until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.